Hey, welcome back to Her Restored Spirit podcast. My name is Tammy, and I'm your host. And we have been uncovering this clear the clutter of whatever, clear the clutter of our physical space. Clearing the clutter allows us the freedom to make choices. We talked last week about the clearing the clutter of the mind and your thoughts, and we just tapped on it a little bit. Today, I want to talk about, we're going to go into clear the clutter, but we're going to talk about another benefit. When I was talking with someone earlier, and we were discussing confidence, how we all want confidence, and how if we wait for it, how we're just, once I get the confidence, it's almost like once I get the motivation, waiting for the external, that's when it'll all fall into place. It'll all make sense, and we can just go about and we can do what we're called to do. Well, confidence doesn't show up. It's not, someone's not going to like mail it to you. Someone's not going to hand it to you and be like, oh, you're ready now. Here's your confidence. Go. One thing that I have recognized is the lack of confidence that we're experiencing, the lack of knowing, the lack of a lot of this. When we start clearing the clutter, when we start taking layers off, confidence starts to reveal itself in you and how God created you, the giftings that God gave you. Clearing the clutter actually helps us uncover the confidence that already exists. Remember back a time that you really felt confident. For me, and I don't know if it's exactly right for you, but from what I'm uncovering in myself, and what I'm talking when I'm talking to my clients and with my friends, it all seems to have a pattern of when we're removing all of these external things, when we're removing all of the things that the additional, the lessons, the experiences, the teachings, I mean, even the Bible verses and all of these things that we add, that we're like, all these things we have to do, things we have to memorize, the things that we need to embody, things that we need to add, all of that is just building up over our confidence. When we start shedding some of this stuff, and I'm not saying Bible verses are not important, so stay with me here. But what I'm saying is all of these extra things that are supposed to be like, they're like training wheels where we add them until it's part of who we are. But if we don't remove those training wheels, if we don't remove those extra things that are keeping us, right, from putting on that cloak of confidence, which really it's not even putting it on, it's just removing the stuff that keeps us from showing it. It's just all the cover over it. Confidence at its core is who we are, what we do, understanding, having that the faith that we're able to do what we need to do, show up how we're intended to show up, be who God called us to be and who He created us to be. And when we add those extra layers, we are actually covering up who He's created us to be. Not that those things are bad, but they're little layers of protection until we're ready to use them. But if we don't shed, because even in every lesson, we can take bits and pieces of it that apply to us, not entire messages, not entire educational programs, not entire, even all the million math equations. We use the ones that we need for this moment. And it's the same, those skills, those, so like last week, if this video seems a little bit choppy, this is just a little, like, I'm still fighting this cough, and I'm trying not to cough in your ear. So I'm putting on pause when I cough and then I come back. So if it seems a little choppy, it's because it is. And I apologize and it's getting better, but it's not better yet. But hey, we do what we got to do. We unclutter and make things, well, we just do what we got to do. And this is what I got to do right now. So I'm doing it because I haven't missed a Monday recording. I haven't missed a podcast. And though it may be a little bit later in the, that I record this, it's still happening. Yeah, we do what we got to do. That's what we do, right? Anyway, back to confidence. Part of confidence is knowing. And the more external things, I mean, if think about a test that you're trying to study for, and you have all of these facts that you're trying to memorize, cram in as fast as you can. And then when you get to the test, it's just you and the paper or you and the computer and that test. And you can only recall the part that you know. Like some of it you may have a familiarity. But I think confidence is kind of like that. It's when push comes to shove. If you want to be confident, you really want to exude confidence. All of those things you've been cramming in, you need to kind of filter those. You need to remove the things that are no longer needed as protections. You don't need to you don't need the flashcards. How confident are you when you're speaking, when you have a list of facts that you have to say? Well, that's part of your just speaking it out. When you have a speech you're trying to give and you have all these external facts, all these things that you're trying to memorize, it feels very foreign. But then when you start to internalize it and you start to depend on the fact that you understand and you know it in your heart versus those note cards that you have, all of a sudden the confidence comes that you know. With self-confidence, it's the same thing. We have to start depending on who God created us to be and less on those external things that make us appear who we want to be. Those are crutches, those things. Some of them even are like self-doubt, self-consciousness, a poor self-examination, like a poor self-worth. All of those things are hindering the overwhelm, the people pleasing, those expectations. All of these things are reducing our confidence. They're layers over our confidence, which you're like, okay, if people like me, then I'll know what to do. Well, you're allowing others and the external world to decide who God called you to be at that point. And we cannot do that and wear confidence. We can't do what other people expect us to do and please everyone around us and please God at the same time. We just can't do it. So what we have to do is we have to remove those things that are not part of the core, the essence of us. Get back to the essence of you. We talked last week about just this decluttering the mind. So now if we declutter those things they've served us, we thank you and release you. All like the overwhelm, the doubt, like I said, the expectations, the things that we expect of ourselves, if it does not align with who God created us to be. What if those expectations are actually a block that's keeping us, because it's fearful to not have that standard. It's fearful to go into a room that's unknown. It's fearful to step in and try something you've never done before. You can't set realistic expectations for things you've never seen, heard, done. No, you can't do it. So what if it's those expectations that are actually keeping you from having the confidence? What if your expectation is to trust God and to trust in the things that you can do based on who you are? I know it sounds crazy, and I know it sounds like, well, it's just it's just it's just I just can't. I don't know. I don't all of these things. If we want the self-confidence, if we want to be able to step into our purpose, our calling, who God created us to be, we have to shed all the layers that are covering over it. I'm thinking right now of, how many YouTube videos there are of makeup artists, and holy cow, these young girls that are barely old enough to walk, and they can do makeup, and it's like the colors that they put on their faces. I'm like, that's an orange. Why would they put an orange on? Like it shows so much. How is that going to make look natural? And then when you look at the finished product, they look completely different than who they started out as, but it looks natural. It looks beautiful, but it's still not them. And part of me, like that mask, because they literally at that point they're putting so much on, and it is a mask. And I just look at that and what they started out looking like and what they are. And I'm not saying it's a work of art, but it's also the confidence in who they were originally. That is where their confidence is. If you put on a mask, you have confidence in the mask protecting you. You have confidence in the mask portraying a certain expectation, a certain lifestyle, a certain persona. That's only going to get you so far. Because what happens if you have to walk out without that? What if you don't have the 30 minutes to put on that mask? True confidence comes from within. And when we start to shed the things external and really just recognize and have faith that God created us to be exactly who we're called to be, exactly who we're meant to be, and exactly who He needs us to be, how He wants us to be. Not saying makeup's bad or anything. That's not, but just think about the mask that you're putting on when you're trying to put on a false confidence. But when you remove things, when you remove all of this and just show up as you, when you just show up and say, hey, this is me, this is what I can do, this is who God created me to be, and it's different. Because God does not make carbon copies. So what if having confidence in ourselves means that we pour into self-development, we pour into our education, we get a worldview that's outside of our little community. But what if we take those into consideration with the gifts and the knowing of who God created us to be, what our fears are, what our skills are, what our talents are, what our giftings are? What do people come to you for? What is natural to you? What feels aligned? What are you good at? What lights you up? What feels right in this season? And what if you rest your confidence in those things instead of all of the external? So when you clear in the clutter, you can reveal your confidence. This is something I'm going to explore a little bit more coming up. Just the whole idea, and the idea of self-doubt, which I will touch on right now, but it's a different conversation. So I want to share with that in an upcoming podcast, is the idea of doubt and humility, how we kind of put them hand in hand. And when we clear out doubt, clearing the clutter of doubt, how many times has not being 100% certain stopped you? And it goes hand in hand with confidence, because in confidence, we think we need to be certain. But what we need to rest in is the ability, the talents, the giftings God has naturally given us, or we built through experience over the years, that we know that we can handle the situation, whether we understand what is going to happen or not. Another thing, our circumstances. How many times have we allowed our circumstances to hinder our confidence? How many times have we done that? How many times have we let the circumstances, our current ones or our past ones, but we let that dictate what we do, what we don't do, what we're going to do, what we're thinking about, what we're maybe going to try. We allow our circumstances to dictate way more than they should. And soon our circumstances take the place of our confidence. We can't do that. Our circumstances do not get to decide who we are. Our circumstances do not get to decide how our story ends. Our circumstances don't even get to decide who or what or why or any of those who, what, when, why, how at the center of our story. We get to do that. We get to put the lens on any story, any circumstance. We get to change the perspective in a moment, and you don't have to do that just once. If you find that the perspective you've taken does not work for you, you get the privilege, the freedom, the opportunity to shift it in a way that is edifying and empowering and adds confidence instead of removing it from you. Your circumstance does not get to decide your confidence level. Just because you've been through hard things doesn't mean you're not capable of dealing with them. Doesn't mean you're not capable of rising above them. Does not mean that you're stuck in the middle of them. You get to determine what elements of your circumstances get to stay with you. For me, I chose the elements of grief that are uplifting, that are empowering, that helped shape my character to be deeper and more compassionate and more forgiving. And well, I have allowed the circumstances to shape me in a way that when I see someone who's hurting, I don't automatically judge them because I don't really know how that circumstance is affecting them. Your confidence and your circumstances do not go hand in hand. You can have confidence at a higher level in the middle of a circumstance, in the middle of a hardship, in the middle of making new choices, and you can still shed the things that don't align with you, that don't illuminate the giftings God has given you. So don't allow your circumstances, your overwhelm, your anxiety, your negative self worth, your frustration, your other people's expectations, expectations of yourself. All of those things are layers that are on top of your confidence that if you start to shed them and start to set them aside and see them for what they are, that they are no longer serving you in the way that you need to be served. They allowed protection at one time, but you don't need that now. You are strong enough to step into who you were called to be simply because you've been through those and you lived through them. You don't need that anymore. So when you're clearing the clutter, think about that. Think about what layers are covering the real me. What layers are covering the calling, the gifting, the talents that God has given me that I'm using as a shield. And then slowly shed those to reveal the confidence. Because when I'm at my most confident, it's because I rest in who God created me to be. And I'm not trying to recall other things that, other facts or other experiences or things that I've learned along the way. Once that becomes part of my own experience and who I am, then that becomes part of the confidence, but not before. So if you're waiting for your confidence to show up so you can be unapologetically, completely authentically you, you're waiting for that. It's not going to show up. It's not going to just appear. You've got to shed the layers that are keeping you from revealing it. So if you're interested in knowing how to do that, come to my workshop, because as we're talking about eliminating these three things that are blocking us from a thriving life, being confident is the number one thing that you can do to have a thriving life. If you're confident in you, why wouldn't you enjoy life? Why wouldn't you be able to do the things you want to do and you enjoy doing? So come to my workshop. I have it coming up in like 10 days. It's sign up, come. It's going to be awesome. I promise you, you will not leave the same if you just allow the vulnerability for a moment. And the dogs are going crazy. So I guess it's time to end. But just know, come to my website, on social media. All right, well, I got them to be quiet for a moment. So let me finish this out before they start barking again. Come to my workshop. Come and just see what the possibility is. Because when we start to remove the things that are not part of us, when we start to remove the things that are blocking us, when they're keeping us from actually achieving and being who we want to be, that's when we get to see what God's purpose for us is. That's when we get to have a thriving life. And that's when we get to really be aligned with why we're here. So come and do that. And with that, choose joy, friend, until joy chooses you. Have a good day.